tried not to shout.
I felt like I was holding this thing.
No, I saw you really holding it at one
No,
point.
but at one point I was caressing that thing. How's that one better?
Woo.
We're rolling.
Rolling.
Yeah,
Gentlemen, we're back. We're live, episode 2. I think I said prior to this that I'm a bit more comfortable speaking about this one. The first topic was a bit tough, but I think today's topic, which is the importance of early diversification, is quite an interesting one for me, just because I think it speaks a lot to my own personal business philosophy, in that I've almost found I call them multiple passions. 5 actually that I've outlined, which are property development, trading and investing, health and wellness, business systems, and construction. So I think it's very controversial to the way we're almost taught to view our careers, where, there's this thing of go to school, go study, stick to one path,
Become really good at
dial
it.
down, become good at that, become a specialist. And I think we're very much, as humans, far from specialists in that we have so many different talents, and I think it's more about understanding how to leverage and utilize those talents. So this topic, the importance of early diversification, quite an exciting one for me, just because I enjoy dabbling in multiple different industries. Not something that I'll say I've mastered yet, but figuring it out. So yeah, I think before we jump into it though, as always, I think it's important to sort of identify or define what diversification is when we're speaking about business now. So yeah, how would you gents define diversification in a business context?
I think for me, I only came to really set my eyes on this issue of diversification with the advent of COVID-19. I was very much in business focused on things that I had access to and I was skilled in.
Yeah.
But then the notion of diversification, where you actively now try to find yourself in spaces that are different to one another, so that if ever challenges come in the other, you can balance on the other. I think that's what diversification is for me. In a nutshell, that's what it's about. So with the advent of COVID-19, we saw a lot of people who lived in that space of being specialists now find themselves in a real bind, where if your industry in particularly, let's say for example hospitality, was negatively affected by the pandemic, it was now a thing of, I've been doing this for 30 years and it's the only thing I know how to do. When I'm now in a position where I need to have something else that sustains me and as well sustains this business that is now failing as a result of the pandemic. That's when the diversification, as a thing that you do actively, dawned on me. You know,
I think just speaking as well to lockdown and COVID-19, businesses that were deemed non-essential, I think a lot of people saw themselves being put in positions where you couldn't wait around for someone to say that you're essential now, go work. You had to get out of that comfort zone and find something that was essential. So yeah, I think just wanted to add on to
So hence why I'm saying I've had a diverse portfolio, if I can use that term, in the sense that the work that I've been doing, since way back when, up to the advent of COVID-19, has been in different spaces. But I wasn't actively doing that because it was as a result of opportunity and capability only. Those are the things that had driven me to take advantage of the various industries or spaces that I was in.
Okay.
So again, now I think we're discussing diversification as an active move towards creating a portfolio that is diverse in an effort to be able to sustain all the different aspects of your business, you know?
Yeah.
It's an important one. It's a very important one that needs to be discussed, and you need to actively act towards it, you know? Not necessarily the way that I was doing it, where it was just opportunity, capability.
So, are you saying in your personal experience, diversification wasn't, you didn't actively act on it? It's more, you dabbled in it from time to time, but with obviously COVID and everything that came, that brought the need for it to become a lot more consistent in your day-to-day. Got you.
Definitely.
Okay, thoughts? What would you say diversification is?
I think, obviously, from a business background, I'm talking about my studies now. For me, the term diversification came up in probably every single module that I did. You always hear, never put all your eggs in one basket. You know, always diversify. That was something that they always try to push on you.
Sure.
And like Usianda's saying, I think COVID really showed us the importance of diversification. For us as well, we're mainly in construction. So the first lockdown, we sat.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people did. And I think it's coming out of that where it was like, you know what, let's take a more proactive approach to diversifying, to, you know, what other industry can we do that is not too far off to construction? What else can we go into? As Sam likes to say, what other part of the value chain can we attack?
Sure.
You know, just to put ourselves more out there. And COVID, you know, it really did fast track that process. And I think it was easier for us as well. I always say this. If I was running a one-man show, I think things would be a lot more difficult.
Sure.
But I know that if I can't do something, Sam is there, and vice versa. So that thing of diversification was a lot easier for us because there was always someone to head up that different division and do it to the best of their ability.
Because it's almost like if you're in one, or if you, like you said, a one-man show, you have to very much focus on that one industry. If there's multiple, it becomes harder to split your focus. So the more of us there are, there's two of us. The easier it is in that sense.
Can I just, in an effort to understand better what we're discussing? So in the arena of construction equipment, for example, as a construction business, does diversification mean, as a construction business, I then diversify in the sense that I go into another industry? Or does diversification mean if I was an individual who primarily had 10 cube tippers, do I then change and get different equipment? Or, you know, is this question more about scale and, you know, less about whether or not the other is diversification or not, you know, or both of them qualify as diversification, right?
For me, diversification, the way I understood it, is going into another industry so that should your main one, construction, now this is the whole of the construction industry, should it stop, what else is still moving?
Okay.
Yeah. I think for me, it's not so much should it stop. I think it's more, you've built a foundation in one industry. How do you now, off that knowledge base, expand into neighboring industries that you can now leverage?
Sure.
So I think just from our personal experience, and I think this almost speaks into the benefits of diversification, is that we're obviously from a construction background. And so in construction, you will naturally over time build up quite a heavy plant and machinery base. And so with that, you won't always have projects running. That's natural with any company.
Sure.
There's supply and demand. You go through different phases of being busy. And so you almost have to keep record of how often obviously your machinery is working and whether it's working for you, because owning machinery might not always be the best idea, especially if there's not a lot of demand for work. But in those periods where there isn't demand for work, that's almost a gap for you to leverage the ownership of that asset to breach into now transport. If you have a 34-ton truck that's sitting and you're not using it to transport machinery, you can now use that to transport something else. So that's, I think, how we primarily saw the diversification into different industries within our own, from our own experience. That's very much on the logistics side. On the property side, I think as well, over time, I think just with the nature of business and, you know, accumulating more assets, we saw the accumulation of property, but now instead of just letting that property sit, we said, why not now think of developing that within our own capacity?
Sure.
You know, now you're leveraging assets that are sitting, and you've almost created another avenue into another industry. So I think that's how I look at diversification. It's not completely doing a 180 and jumping into a completely separate industry. It's more about looking at what you have and leveraging, you know, the asset base that you've built in whatever industry that is. So I think that speaks to a good understanding of your industry and the value chain that comes with that, because you need to have a good idea of how can I make this work in a different way. And yeah, there's a lot of innovation that I think that goes behind diversification.
Sure. And I mean, so primarily for us being in the construction industry, mining and property development as well, I think it's important to then understand or identify assets while building your asset base, identify assets that come across as versatile, you know. For example, front-end loader works in mining, works in agriculture, works in construction, you know.
Different industries, same asset.
Different industries, same asset. So it's being able to identify, firstly, the versatility of whatever product or plant equipment you're wanting to buy, and then looking also at the accessibility of those industries as well, because it then becomes a different chat as well, because now I think, especially with you guys in the conversations we've been having, wanting to go into logistics, in the mining space, there are a lot more things you now are needing to understand. Yes, you do have the plant base. Now it's building the information. What it is do you know about that industry that can contribute, find that gap, you understand, within that industry. Diversification, though, is a very tricky one in that information sense. You know, you cannot necessarily nosedive into something. You need to create that information base yourself that will help you understand and navigate within that industry. So there's a lot of mind work involved for us, especially as people who are starting out, in that you need to then now have that future thinking in mind. I will get this asset, and how does it then feed into the different interests that I have? You know, without straying away from the main picture, because you don't want to be a wishy-washy person who does everything and you know, every other thing. We want to be people who are primarily focused in the industries that we've mentioned, right? So maybe for us, diversification falls within these four, and in essence as well, it does give us or create some sort of a cap where there are certain things that we will never be able to tap into now as a result of choosing these industries. You know, for instance, building your asset base in construction, you won't have much of a hold in the entertainment industry or something like that. Here we are trying to bridge the gap right here. Light bulb moment. Light bulb moment. Hey, here we are trying to bridge the gap. So yes, big ups to us for trying to do that. I'll try and find another example,
it's
bro.
like it's such a scary venture though, because I think it's already trying to capitalize and make the most out of one industry or one business model is complex enough. So it's such a daunting idea to now think of how to almost branch off into a separate unknown industry. But there are some benefits that come with that.
Yeah.
What would you guys say some of those are? Personally, like you said, getting or exposing yourself to more of the value chain, taking on more of the value chain. You want to be able to look at the entire value chain of your industry. With construction in particular, construction is one element of the entire built environment, or depends on the context, the development value chain. Prior to construction, there's the design and the planning, there's the inception phase. Post-construction, there's the maintenance, which might require IT systems and software development. Construction is just one element of that value chain, and there's so many other business models that make up the entire product or service sort of or product design, product you know.
Yeah, we get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say. So I think that's just one benefit of it. Yeah, what would you guys say some others are?
Benefits of diversification. For me, I feel like it goes down to why you're sort of diversifying. Like Sam had listed those 5 passions that he has. And obviously, if you're within one industry, being construction, and you're diversifying sort of within
The value chain.
the same value chain, it helps you as a business person because you're able to keep more of control
Over the market,
over the market and
Budget
the product that you end up putting out, you're most likely going to be much more satisfied with it because you had a hand along the process.
Yeah.
But then when I look at it personally, my passions are, some of them are so far off from each other that like for me it's property, transport here and there, not so much. So. Construction, I don't like construction actually. So my passions are, let me start again because now I'm listing things I don't like.
Yeah, the half other things you don't like.
It's property. I love jewelry and watches. If anyone knows me, those are my things.
Nice.
And I love cars.
Yeah.
Like for me, those are the things that I really enjoy. And for me to diversify, I already have a plan in mind on how I will eventually get into those industries.
Yeah.
But it's not so much having an end product that I'll be satisfied with, as I was saying, but it's more of like a personal satisfaction of me diversifying. It's like I enjoy those things so much that making a business out of it is a satisfaction that I'll get.
Yeah.
So for me, that is my benefit
Sure.
as to why I want to go into those things.
So the diversification almost takes you out of the box mentality of you have to focus on. Pick one passion, execute on that.
I can't pick.
Whatever you feel like you love and whatever you want to monetize and turn into a business, diversification almost allows you to go down.
That's it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, one thing that I'm really appreciating now is us making it clear that one needs to diversify. I think in order to achieve success or success in a shorter amount of time, you need to diversify within a value chain. You understand?
Yeah.
All of these things need to work together, in a sense. So I think with that appreciation then, obviously for me, it being logistics, mining, and construction in a different way. I mean, we're more in the consulting side of things, geotechnical boys, So also for me, in the process is where I was able to appreciate diversification within the value chain. So obviously it's you starting at some point, finding your feet at that point, and then seeing, okay, as a result of me being able to do this and solidifying this aspect of the value chain, how do I then contribute to the rest of it? And in an effort to diversify, obviously diversification is a difficult thing to do at an early point. It is important, I think our discussion is to shed light on the importance of doing it, but it's not in any way an easy thing to do, because it does need a lot of financial muscle, you need to yourself be mentally open to access these things, and also keep your eye out for these
just
things.
the knowledge that you have to accumulate.
It's a lot, my man. It's a lot. Where I have an appreciation for agriculture, but it's up to me to then find where do I fit in this chain. I can't just straight up say, no, I'm gonna plant a few hectares of something that I don't know anything about. So it is a process on its own, a process that we must appreciate. Yes. But yeah, on the question of importance to us, for me, it's a very, very young importance in my life. As I said, it's COVID-19 that opened my eyes to let's diversify, After having someone close to me, I asked him, he's struggling, and he's just like, yo, bro, I've been doing this for so long. How do you expect me to do something else? I'm just like, yo, so the time to diversify is now. Because we don't want to find ourselves down the line in a bind and then having to reconsider things.
Rather be proactive.
Sure.
I think, yes, be proactive, and I think it goes without saying diversification comes with monetary benefits, because theoretically the more industries you're involved in, obviously the more revenue you can pull in. But, the more reward, the more risk that goes into it.
Sure.
So it can be costly. Naturally, it should be, because nothing comes out without you putting in, right? So I think that's one aspect of it that people do underestimate, and I think we've seen that within our own capacity. Just the short period of time I've been working in the family business, I've seen the old man get burned by transport. Transport sector is brutal.
Sure. I mean,
it's booming, but it's brutal.
It's booming, but it's brutal. And anyone who's in it will tell you that it's brutal and they've been burned. And so, I mean, in that short period of time I've been working, I've seen, mans try to enter and obviously get burned. But, I mean, there were definitely steps that could have been taken prior, certain knowledge that we could have learned beforehand. So I think that almost segues into whether diversification can be a terrible idea. And I think it can, because you need to be well equipped in terms of the information you have about what you're going into before you go into that. There's definitely an information infrastructure that needs to exist so that you can take calculated risk and not just throw money at something that you don't fully understand. Otherwise, you will get burned, fully.
And I mean, I'm an honest believer in the fact that you must be standing on 2 feet in one area for you to then be able to, jump into the next, you know? Because, I mean, we could very well speak of this thing as an important thing to do early, but if you do not have a solid foundation in something, then how can you then add value in another? It becomes a complicated thing, because a lot of people then look at the notion of diversification out of strain. Currently I'm in this industry and I'm feeling strain. How do I move on to the next one? But for us, fortunately enough, we're in a position to think, hey, rather than wait for this thing to be a necessity, let me be proactive, as you said, where if I see a little success here, let me take this money, put it there, in an effort to grow this thing and then become what they call a conglomerate at some point.
Hey, you love that word.
I love it. Geologists unite.
But I think that's important, what you're saying, in that it's not, diversification isn't supposed to be an escape from your current problems that you're facing and said industry that you've decided to focus on. Whenever you look at diversifying or expanding into other industries, it needs to very much be looked at from a position of wanting to add more value to what you currently have. From, okay, you've identified this opportunity and you feel like you have the necessary capacity to put in what's necessary so that you can create more in a different way, not from a perspective of, like you said, I'm drowning here. Just look to the next possible thing that could bring you some sort of turnover, because then you're almost running away from, facing the music, and that's when you start to make a few mistakes.
I think for me, the only way diversification can be a terrible idea is if you don't have the necessary knowledge. Because that's the biggest thing. Because as a human, once you get burnt, you're very reluctant to go and try again, unless, some of us love taking risks. We'll go and try again. But rather it be a calculated risk.
And
so I think that's the biggest thing, is just if you can acquire the knowledge and know that you're making a sound decision, even if you do get burnt, it's like, rather you know that, okay, I tried it this way, I'm going to try it again. Understand why. And you get burnt a second, bro, there's no amount of times that you cannot get burnt. Even logistics, we've probably been burnt 3 or 4 times. But we know
even
that
before we've gotten going, probably currently to this day, in this past week, we got burnt by something.
We're getting burnt, bro. But the thing is,
but that's the day-to-day.
we see not even the finish line, we see the starting line, because it's a new industry that we're about to get into. We see it, it's there, it's just, nothing ever goes to plan, and it's just a matter of time. It's one of those where we're fortunate enough to say that it's a matter of time. But
it's almost like you have to, it's all about understanding your risks, in a sense, from what I'm getting from this discussion, and that when you don't know what's going to happen in terms of what you're going to lose, it becomes painful when you lose that thing, because you were never anticipating that. I think that's a mistake we've seen from our experience, from not budgeting for these types of expansions or diversifications. We don't make proper monetary allowance, so any amount is going to hurt you when you're not ready for it, at least mentally. But once you've been able to at least see prior to taking said risks that, okay, there's a potential that X amount could be lost from this decision.
So as a coach, you budget the profit, you never budget a loss.
Never. Because you know what you can make, but we don't take the time to see what you can lose. And not that it makes it any better when you do lose it, but just the understanding behind the risk that you're taking, that can help in getting you back up and reevaluating to try again, as opposed to now having this negative outlook that, no, this industry is ABC and it doesn't work because of this, and now you're just making up excuses just because you got burnt, just because you weren't ready for it.
Because another thing for me in creating that knowledge base that we keep speaking of, I think it's important to also consider investing in other people, in the sense that there are people and individuals out here who have a lot more knowledge about the industries that we want to go into. Invest in those individuals, especially at a very young age. I mean, I was very surprised to have had an experience where I chose to invest in someone who's, going to assist us to go into GIS. I don't know much about GIS, but I needed someone who's going to do work in the GIS space under that geotechnical flag, and it was so nice to reap the benefits for me. Fortunately enough, it didn't fail, where I invested in someone who had the potential, who had the understanding, but just did not have the opportunity. You understand? So then, in this diversification and expansion discussion, it's important to consider the use of individuals who are very skilled in the things that we are not skilled in ourselves. Because most of the time in that diversification, we're wanting to have a great understanding ourselves of what it is we're trying to go into. It's a notion of, it's on the point of growth. As we grow, in the previous episode we did discuss with the, eventually entrepreneurship becomes a thing where you are able to extract yourself from the business, but it still runs.
Mm.
That is
Yeah.
primarily based on investing in
Yes.
individuals that are driven and very knowledgeable in what they are doing.
Mm.
You know, so in the point of diversification, let us try and look at how to, because there are a lot of young graduates, and in my experience, in the story that I'm telling you about, I'm speaking about someone who has not had a job, gotten a job rather, for 2 years after graduating.
Yeah.
You know, it's an opportunity now that they were lacking, but not the skills. So we as black young entrepreneurs should really take advantage of that, you know, wanting to go into, well, I'm speaking about science. I don't know if it's applicable in logistics, where in logistics maybe it's a thing of experience and time, where that informs a lot of your knowledge in the space, you know. But certainly from a scientist's point of view, I always feel you can really gauge from an individual's drive and diligence in the classroom, you know, when we do get out into the field, will you be able to, you know, do what is required of you, you know?
I mean, on that one, I think it comes down to intention, bro. Just because I think that there's probably a few people who would argue that us were a bit out of our depth even doing this in terms of experience. But so hence when it comes to experience and things like that, I think regardless of the industry, if there's at least some sort of foundational knowledge in, you know, the position that you're trying to fill, I think it very much comes down to the individual's intention on how much they're trying to put into that. You'll find the said graduate that you're speaking about probably really wanted to make that position work, not only for themselves but for you and the industry. So they pulled out all the stops. And that's what matters. That's almost what determines the rate of learning. You don't have to get someone. It's so hard to get someone with 10 to 15 years of experience that you can afford.
You could get someone with 10 to 15
you
years,
can,
but
you definitely can.
they could drag their feet compared to that person.
Yeah. So I think regardless of industry, and that's just to hopefully uplift some young graduates now, and that it's more about intention. And I think we're seeing this shift where a lot of business owners who are hiring you know, new staff are looking more at the intention and what that individual is looking to put into the company rather than, you know, do you have 10, 15 years? Not that that's not important. Don't want to shy away from that. But it's not the only thing that matters. Don't count yourself out if you don't have that 10 to 15 years track record.
But to get the onus is on us as the front runners to then create those opportunities, right? We need to be very aware of that at all times. That there's this workforce that really, really does need pioneers like such as ourselves to move forward. Because I feel like I got a very different message from school. Very much speaking on the point of diversification, yes, because when it came time for me to choose a major where whether I was going to focus more on ore deposits, which looks more at the mining side of things, or go into the engineering and environmental side of things.
Sorry, and you studied?
Geological sciences.
So,
yeah.
those who do not know.
Sharp, BSc in geological sciences.
Learned boys.
Yeah. So for me, then it became a thing of I would much rather be a general person, you know, in an effort to diversify and work in all of these
so
things.
that you don't limit yourself.
Sharp, because my thing, even in choosing said qualification, was the versatility that it comes with, because I'm able to be valuable in the construction industry as well as in the mining industry, you know, as someone with a qualification of the sort, you know. So diversification in itself is also something that you can be very well aware of, rather, in choosing your studies and all of those things, especially with you who chose to take a direction in finance, which does not necessarily put you in one bottle, because you understand the greater scheme of things. You know, how does a financial institution function? By financial, I put it in inverted commas, because all businesses are a financial institution, not just banks and insurance companies and all those things. You need to be able to have that big picture mentality.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, it's been a long one here. That will enable you to see yourself in those various industries. So, I've been very fortunate in that that's how I viewed school. It wasn't a thing of, hey, I'm fighting to do this one major because I'm extremely good at it. Mine was, okay, when I have this thing, I can knock on that door, and that door. You know? So, unfortunately, all the things we discuss here throw back to your mindset and your mentality, and how you need to be able to hone these skills and see yourself in these spaces way before you're in them. You know, for me, having grown up in a logistics company that was primarily focused on the construction industry, I had also identified, Uti, this company that we had, because my father had a great number of things, you know, tipper, water tanker, 12-tonner, 4-tonner. So to me, it was a thing of, I'm focusing now. I looked at how the performance was, and I was like, okay, fine, the tippers are doing much better. So then where does the tipper fit in, you know? How do I then, in my education and in my expansion of our knowledge base as a business, you know, try to find something that fits into these to various industries. Hence, if I'm now in the geology space, I can then become of service to both industries, you know. So that is to shed light on a different kind of diversification, you know.
No, that makes
where
sense, bro.
you don't necessarily have to be in the ballpark to be thinking about the game, bro. You know. So
But I think it's an important. I like the topic you touched on, where you said invest in the relevant personnel, or along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. Just because I think when it comes to diversification, we sometimes feel like we need to know everything about every single industry that we're involved in. And you'll find that becomes hard when you're involved in 6 different industries, because it becomes a time issue then. You don't have time to literally get down to the micro.
Mate, even if you're in one industry,
yeah,
you can say
never
you
enough
know
time.
everything about that one
so
industry.
hard. So then you almost, from that sense, have to look at yourself from an investor's perspective.
Sure.
Where you, like you said, you invest in the personnel that drive that that subsidiary, if you want to call it that, or that branch that operates in that industry.
Sure.
And that's just part of entrepreneurship, wanting to unlock different sectors, different markets, and having that market exposure. Sometimes that's the strategy to do it, investing in the personnel.
Sure. I mean, after all, we are in the business of people. You know, we can speak about plant, we can speak about a bunch of things, bro, but all of the things that we want and desire, already have, you know, have had before, were driven by people, you know. So I think the ultimate investment is in the right person, you know. It takes time to identify the right person. I mean, also yourself, you need to have that eye, you know. I don't know what the eye is. Maybe it's natural.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to almost, you have to know within yourself what you want and how you're going to attack that industry and how you're even going to go about being in that industry. Before then you can be like, okay, I need this person who's going to handle this. I need this person who's going to handle this. If I just say I want to be in logistics tomorrow, but I don't even know. Logistics is such a broad thing on its own. It's like
Can crumble very quickly.
it can crumble very, very quickly. So I think it all goes down to just knowing what you want first. Before then you can be like, okay, I know what I want. How can I go about then attacking that industry?
I think it's very clear that diversification can be a terrible idea if you haven't put the time into understanding the industry that you essentially want to branch into. Understanding takes time, though. learning about an industry, figuring it out. So I think that then begs the question, when is the good time to diversify? Because personally, I feel like you almost want to get a good idea of what you like as soon as possible. So it's a bit contradiction that you want to focus on, what got you started, and you want to give that as much time and effort as possible. But then at the same time, you want to put effort into figuring out, is this the only thing I like, or do I like B, C, D as well? But to obviously figure that out, like we're saying now, you need to put in the relevant time, focus, and effort into that. So, it's a tough one. When's the right time?
It's crazy because I'm thinking about, obviously I said earlier on, like, I enjoy watches and jewelry as well. And that's something that I really will get into. I was doing some research, I think it was probably late last year. And I'm like, okay, I really like this whole industry. Like, it looks really nice as well on social media. But I actually don't know that much about it. Like, okay, I don't have to know how to make a watch. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it's like I need to have some sort of knowledge about what I'm trying to go into. Especially the custom watch jewelry, what I'm trying to go into. It's like I need to know specific components and certain terminology and stuff that go into that industry. And it's like I realized it's never something that I was gonna attack right away. It was always something that it's gonna take time for me to get into it. And I think that time is me actually learning about it. Because if I knew about it, the excitement about it would have probably pushed me into doing it already. And I think that's the thing. It goes down to the individual. How long are you giving yourself time to learn about what are you trying to get into? Once you've given yourself that time, are you then comfortable with, putting yourself out there? If I go into a room, some Geneva watch convention, am I comfortable in a room full of professionals to be like, you know what? I know what I'm talking about. I can.
This is what I'm about.
This is what I'm about. It's not just some passion where I'm double tapping on Instagram anymore. Am I comfortable in the presence of those people? And I think if you're comfortable within yourself to be like, okay, this is something I can wake up and I can talk about, and I'm not ashamed to say that I do that thing or I'm in that business. I think that's when you can say, okay, I can jump into it. For me,
comfortable so much so that you can, be able to take a stand, firstly. Comfortable so much so that you can have confidence in a decision that you make, Because for me, in my own experience, it's been a thing of, sometimes I can sit by myself and say, I do not have any knowledge regarding this, and then an individual working on it within the establishment will come through to me and say, but Sianda, do you think that this is correct? Now it becomes a confidence thing. You understand? I need to be confident enough to say no or yes to that individual, So, as you said, we need to then put ourselves in a position where we're thinking as investors, where it's not so much you having the knowledge of the watch and how it works and the nuances and all of those things. It's about you having enough confidence to take a stand and say, no, that's not the right one. I'd much rather have it this way. That confidence rather, is also coming from the confidence you have in that big picture that you have in your mind, bro. Are you valid enough to be in that position? You need to up your validity at any and all points in the value chain, in the staff, in the organogram of that organization. You need to be the one who's on the top. And the one who's on the top is the one who, at the end of the day, has enough confidence to tell you yes or no. So in diversification, then, our fight is not so much to pick up books and read about things and know about them. It's for us to experience them, because one thing I know, you can speak about watches and stuff. You experience watches. because you make an effort to pick them out. You follow up what they're about, what's new, what's not, what's happening, what's not. So in that notion, or in that space where you're double tapping on Instagram, I feel like you're invested and you're experiencing this, and you double tap and then you go and try and buy the watch, you know?
But I feel from that example that you're making, it's still very surface level. I feel like my knowledge is very much still surface level, and I need to kind of take a deeper approach to it.
Because probably, I mean, there are a lot of things, as you said, terminology and all of those things that I probably wouldn't know about. Me, I'm an Apple Watch boy all day, every day. I don't know jack about watches, you know?
Yeah.
But, Jay, it's about that. It's about the experience and the confidence, bro.
Fully.
You know?
And I think
immerse yourself in this thing, you know? Be around cats who like watches and wear the finest watches because you can see them and, you know? It's Tomba's funny, Nento, in live, you know? Experience it, bro. And
more
then
attention
confident.
What you're trying to go into. And I think just sort of practically as a business, so for example, let's say you're a business owner and you specialize in one thing. Let's say construction. Now you're building construction, but now you want to
specialize
diversify.
construction.
No, not special. Not special. The sponsors asked me. So now, obviously, now you're trying to think about when the best time to diversify is, and you guys have touched on all these points on immersing yourself into this industry that you want to get into, understanding it to a certain level. And I think building a budget that won't hurt your main stream of income is also quite an important factor, because you don't want to take the risk that's going to topple the entire kingdom.
Yeah.
You almost want to have an entirely separate, and I don't know why I feel like put extra emphasis on the financial side of things. I think I'm just a numbers oriented.
No, but that makes sense what you're saying. You have to have a budget for it to
you
fail
have to
or
have
succeed.
a budget for it to fall. Yeah. Do not risk the main entity just for the sake of this diversification. Rather wait. So I think when it comes to when the best time a business should diversify, obviously only you'll know when you have that budget ready. That's not only when you 30 or 35 or 40, or only when your business has been operating for 5 years, 10 years. I think it's a bit unrealistic to put that timeline, because there's some businesses who started diversifying 2-3 years into their business, others 10, 15 years. And you'll find the one that diversified earlier is more successful. It's not, there's nothing written in stone that says when you have to. I just think personally, the earlier I figure out, like I said earlier, what works for me and what I enjoy and what I have risk appetite for, the better, because then I spend a larger portion of my life. Once I've figured out what I like, what I don't like, what works, what doesn't, now scaling focusing. I don't want to start scaling at 70, 80 when I'm sitting on the board only.
Wait, he's talking about scaling at 70. Sam believes that he's going to live till he's like 100.
I heard this.
I
heard
fully.
this. I did hear this.
So you're going to be scaling businesses at 80 years old.
Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen.
Sure, but your plan is.
But
your plan is.
We're talking about a natural old age end to this lifetime.
It's 150.
I believe in doctors of this age, and I believe that modern medicine will take me to the age of 150. I will be an active man. Active man.
Scaling businesses at 100.
Do that, bro.
At 100. I don't know. We'll see.
As long as you still have the confidence, bro, in yourself. I mean, to me, that is the ultimate, the be-all to end-all, that confidence. Because you could very well have confidence at 50 Rand, bro. If I have $200, and I think this is true for me, where in the most, someone else would identify it as the worst position to diversify. I've always been a person who says, if I can get $200 today, let me throw 50 and see what happens, you know? So as far as risk is concerned, I don't know if that's calculated or not calculated, you know? but at least that's what I have the appetite for.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I did see some failure, but let's say 50-50, you know, the 250s.
250s fall.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that confidence, bro, because I'm speaking of, and I mean, we're very young now to be having this conversation ourselves, but ultimately it's driven by confidence, right?
Yeah.
We have confidence enough to say, let's have the conversation of diversification at a very early point so that in the future, when it comes into fruition, you know, we are the guys, the pioneers, you know, the guys who spoke about it before it happened and then it happened, you know. So it's all a confidence game for me at the end of the day. But obviously, you have confidence in something that you know. You have some confidence in something that you can afford. When you look at finances, you will not be able to, because there is someone who's going to do it out of, let me just do it, you know, take the 50, throw it there, when they have no confidence in themselves or the move that they're making. So that's why I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the confidence side of things, where with the moves that I've made, they could very well be deemed ridiculous at this table. But I had confidence, bro. That's the only thing you need in your pocket, you know?
I think this thing of diversification just speaks to exposure. It's another way of, you know, exposing yourself to the many ways that you can leverage your skill set. Because you'll find, and again, I'll make reference to construction because that's what we're in.
Sure.
There's many different ways to source a building project. You know, there's your public and private tendering. Once you start speaking about which are public-private tendering, that's your most common ways, obviously, to source a project. Once you start speaking about diversification now, once you take the developer perspective, you almost become the client now, where you've now just created a new avenue for you to source a project as a contractor. You're now involved in the whole inception, design, which eventually leads up to the project, you know, phase, where as a contractor, which you originally were, you now execute. And you might find along that process that you don't enjoy the development phase.
Sure.
That's okay. You've now exposed yourself to the development scene. You'll find there's a new network of professionals that, you know, you've introduced yourself to, who might now approach you for projects because they know that you understand that element of the entire process.
Sure.
So that's just increasing your exposure, which can always just funnel back into the original industry.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, gentlemen, in closing, I just wanted to ask each of you, what is your nugget for this episode?
Firstly, always remember your ABCs all the way up to G.
Again?
Always. It's a staple.
Is that a staple?
No, this is the prelim, bro. I'm starting where I need to start. The trailer to the real nugget. Always be chasing down every. Say it, guys.
Fucking gap.
Thank you.
Fucking gap.
You can be gold.
It's fucking gap, bro.
Yeah,
Fucking
it's gap. It's gap. Right. But the nugget here is, I hope I'm not being redundant, but it's the thing of confidence for me again. We need to maintain that level of confidence in the things that we do. Because even in diversifying, bro, people have to have confidences in you as well. You understand? If you want to delve into a certain industry, you need to come through as someone who's muscled. You know?
Like Kaibo. Sianda does construction. Now he's offering me logistics services.
Sure.
Can I trust him to take care of that?
Exactly. I could use a very simple example. Like for you to be a luxury watch merchant, you need to be wearing a watch that speaks to that, image.
Business.
Sharp. And that's your confidence lies in that. It lies in the fact that I'm speaking about something that I can
I'm actually not
visually
wearing watches.
show.
Like, this is,
yeah, so
I'm naked
right now you're not the
right
man
now.
to go to, but later on you can give him a call, Yeah, so that confidence one is
Like a transport company owner who has no trucks.
yeah, it's a very much a thing of
could
that.
be a brokerage.
You could pull it off, bro, but
You
it's
definitely could,
it's a confidence thing throughout the spectrum. It's the confidence you have in yourself and the confidence that people can have in you, for them to be able to invest in whatever it is you're wanting to go through with.
Yeah.
You know, but it's important for us to think about diversification at the most elementary level, bro.
Yeah.
Let us not treat this thing as something that needs to be discussed later on at boardroom tables and all that stuff. Diversification is creating another means of income for yourself. You know, diversification is intentionally designing growth. You know, so that's my little nugget for the day.
Yes,
Stay
sir.
confident, you know.
Thank you.
And hold yourself high, bro. Yeah.
I like how you said it's intentionally creating growth.
Designing growth,
Intentionally designing growth. Because that builds on nicely. If I have a nugget, it would be always have intention as to why you're diversifying. Just because I think throughout my own business experience, I've seen a lot of people get into a lot of different industries for the sake of revenue alone, or for the fact that you just need to do more. Doesn't really matter what you're doing, but just do more for the sake of, you know, this bigger balance sheet.
Sure.
And you find that can confuse you a lot, and you get lost in why you're actually doing what you're doing. So if you're going to go down the road of diversifying, at least have a clear intention as to why you're trying to branch off, what value you want to bring to this industry, and for all the stakeholders involved.
Sure. Just to say something, there could very well be, as you said before, there are benefits to not diversify. You know, in the construction space, if you buy, for instance, some machinery from Komatsu, and you get to number 5, and Komatsu says, "Hey, here's a discount because you've been loyal," you know. So in some instances, you don't need to diversify. If it's going well, maybe try not to do that. You know. But in most cases, rather, we'd say at this table generally we'd say diversify, right? Diversify, everybody.
At least try
I think my nugget is just to give yourself time, man. I guess we're all pressured into, you know, catching the wave. No one, what's it, FOMO? FOMO catches a lot of people.
Fear of missing out, right?
You see a lot of people involved in a lot of things. You feel like you need to be there.
So you feel like you need to be there as well. So it's just give yourself time. Figure out what you want to do.
Sure.
Figure out what you enjoy. Once you figured it out, how you're going to go about actually doing that thing as well. Because I think so many of us, once we're like, okay, I want to do construction, then you just jump into construction. It's like, okay, what about construction do you want to do?
So many facets to it.
You know? So it's just give yourself time, figure it out. And when the timing is right, it will happen.
Give yourself time, because you're going to live to 150.
That's a story for another day. I think he's going to have an entire series where he outlines the grand plan. How do we get to 150?
He's going to be in an incubator.
Yes. I'll be there for you, Doug. In spirit, though, because I'm going to die early.
Gentlemen, I think that's episode number 2.